"Let's go to war," shouts the Iron Wolf Guild, that's about to take on the unbeatable boss. The guild used every spell they had, fired a ton of arrows and went in for close combat, but nothing could even scratch the boss because he reflected every single attack at the same time. That power is so broken it wiped out the entire guild, leaving nothing but dust behind. After losing most of the team, the group had basically given up on making it out of that dungeon alive. That's when the group's bag carrier steps in, telling the leader to hold his items because he was going to solo the boss. The leader thought the kid was joking, but when he pulled out his super shiny armor and started moving so fast that even the boss couldn't keep up, Leader Blade's jaw dropped. The bag carrier figures out that the monster's eyes are its only weak spot. He charges straight at the boss and casts a spell that triggers the boss's shield on purpose to distract him. The kid builds momentum, leaps into the air and comes down driving his sword right into the monster's eyes. The boss explodes and goes down defeated. Blade can't make sense of any of it, because that was the first time anyone had ever cleared that dungeon.
What the fuck was that?
That kid is Sushiro Hayato, known in the game as Joker, and he's already hit max level. He's the only one who's cleared 10 of the 30 secret dungeons, all thanks to this woman Kokone, the creator of the game. She was murdered after finding out the game was harming players and trying to shut down the servers. But before she died, she transferred her own mind into the game. Now she's basically his spirit guide. Before Hayato ever met her, he was just a regular player with a low level getting wrecked by orcs. When he was about to become someone's memorial shirt, out of nowhere a girl shows up like an angel throwing out a crazy spell and blowing up every single orc at once. That's Kaori, an old friend of his. That night they went to a bar to grab a drink and catch up. Kaori mentioned she had a plan to farm a ton of gold. Since he was pretty broke, Hayato was in. She handed him a loan contract, where he had to take that money to buy the hero's armor, the most overpowered gear in the game. The next day they headed to a secret farming area called the Forgotten Dragon's Nest. As a demonstration, wearing her hero outfit, she went head-to-head with the dragon and unleashed a power all by herself that went through the boss like it was paper. The kid who was hiding there was shocked to see her clear 2 dungeons in no time and farm over 50,000 essences. Hayato wised up and accepted the deal on the spot. They went straight to a finance office where he talked things over with Sonoda, who told him he made a great deal. With his new armor and the loan money, he started flexing hard, until a group of assassins showed up calling him a fool and saying he got scammed. When the guys came at him, he even tried to log out of the game, but that area had a secret. It was a PK zone, and there was no way out. Out of nowhere, a mage appears, locking everyone in chains. But Hayato didn't even need the help. The MC went in alone and sliced through everyone, all thanks to that completely broken armor. The friend who helped only asked for 10% of the loot. Then they go one by one through the bodies of the fallen mages and loot everything. Xiaobei uses level 15 Hellfire, and that is another Badlander set. That's already 15 million just in armor. One of the thieves tries to attack, but Hayato strikes him from below, finishing the guy off. 3 more try to attack, but they're also destroyed in a single attack. That makes 9 Badlander sets, which means 27 million. Sonoda says this is unbelievable. They were all very well equipped. Hayato says he was fighting a noob, just a high-level one, and he jumps toward the guy, with his sword aimed at his neck, then saying that, despite his appearance, he is trained in combat. At that moment, someone uses a familiar lightning power, causing a huge explosion on the mage. Before kicking the bucket, Xiaobei tells his friend to pay what he promised. And so 10 souls were dedicated to the altar. These are the secret conditions that make the crystal seal weaken. The attack was launched by Kaori. After that, she uses level 30 Hellfire and launches it toward our protagonist. But Hayato knows that this will not affect his hero armor. However, this power is like a sphere with pillars of fire around it. Kaori says that her Hellfire is on a different level, and then complains to Sonoda that he could not catch a little brat like that. The man says the boy is not weak, but she insists he is, because she knows him. At that moment, Hayato asks what she really knows about him, because she has never hunted in level 70 areas with level 60 equipment. Without the refined skill, it is impossible. Kaori is shocked that the boy is alive after being hit by her power. Hayato says that, this past year, while she was hiding with the borrowed money, he was perfecting his skills, and the little girl is going to regret it if she thinks he is still the same. Then Kaori launches her lightning again, but incredibly, the boy manages to parry it. She asks if he maxed out parrying, then she gets hit in the face by her own lightning. Hayato says this is who he is now, but an orange symbol appears around him. The young man is confused. It even feels like an earthquake, but the secret conditions have been fulfilled, and the secret area has been opened. And so our hero was transferred to underground. That is when he sees the spirit of a woman trapped inside a floating crystal. Hayato wonders if she is an NPC and touches the crystal. The woman looks familiar, and it says there that she is the girl who lost her memories. And then, everything explodes at once. The girl is free and floats toward him. Then she merges with the boy, and he receives all her memories, including the last ones. Then his capsule simply explodes, and the boy gets out of there completely wrecked. In the end, he had to stay in the hospital. When he wakes up, he comes face to face with his friend Xiaobei. He says that, if it were not for him, the boy would be dead. Since he wanted to make sure his friend would pay the debt, he went to his house to check, and Hayato was unconscious. And Xiaobei really thought the kid was dead. That is when Hayato remembers touching the crystal, and as soon as the girl entered his body, he felt a horrible headache. And now he remembers all the memories. Unfortunately, his VRS is completely broken. At that moment, the protagonist starts crying, because he paid a lot for that thing. In the waiting room, he realizes the system must have glitched. An hour and a half later, Hayato is yelling, trying to tell his story to two men. One of them explains that the VRS does not artificially inject anything into anyone's brain, and they are investigating the case. The boy just has to wait a little longer. Nervous, Hayato says it is deplorable that the two of them do not believe him, and tells the story once again. But one of the guys whispers that they found the cause of it. It was not a system error that caused the explosion, but water dripping from the ceiling that got into the machine. It may be because the building is old, but water is leaking from a pipe on the floor above. Of course, the young man did not accept that, but the man repeats that the girl's quest who lost her memories never existed. If he has more questions, he can go to his office anytime. This leaves the boy confused, because if the quest does not exist, then what did he see there? Suddenly, Sonoda appears with his goons, asking for his items back, or his life will end right there. Hayato does not know how the guys found out he is in the hospital, but decides to just get out of there. After that, he changed the listing location of the items for sale and went home with his new VRS. However, the fees are way too high. Besides paying Xiaobei, he is flat broke. And the last Badlander set does not have good stats and is not selling. But after selling everything and paying off the debts, he should still have around 300,000 left. Now our protagonist is going to check whether that really was an error, so he goes back to El Dorado. But apparently, there is no one there. However, it could be that someone is using stealth again. He uses his detection watch, and there really are no players. Hayato goes back to the center of the symbol, which had previously taken him to the secret area. A girl beside him asks what he is thinking about, and he explains that he is looking for a girl inside a crystal. She says it must be her, and the idiot realizes something. The two stare at each other, confused. He screams, and she says she is not a ghost. Hayato touches her face and notices that he is in a rare dungeon that no one knows exists, with a girl who knows about the game. She asks if he really knows her. The protagonist is confused because, if she were an NPC, a green aura would appear around her, and the mysterious girl enters Hayato's body again. Then she asks if he still thinks she is an NPC. The young man thinks all of this is very strange. The girl is tiny in his hand now, and she says she'll only leave if he tells her where he first saw her. They're walking through rough land, talking about how she lost her memories, and doesn't know how she ended up inside that crystal. Hayato says he only has the feeling that he's seen her before, but doesn't know where. The strange thing is that he activated the quest last time, but now she's disappeared. But the girl is right there beside him. Maybe she really is an NPC. And the dev team must have given her the appearance of some celebrity. The girl slaps him, repeating that she's not an NPC. Hayato is shocked that she can touch him, and the girl says again that she's not a ghost. Still doubtful, he throws an apple at the girl, which passes right through her and falls to the ground. That leaves the protagonist even more confused, but she explains that she can only touch him, because the young man was the one who woke her up. No one can see or touch her, except the boy. Hayato gets a little embarrassed and intrigued by that idea. He says being an NPC is tough, and she yells that she isn't one. But the young man says that if she isn't a player, then she can only be an NPC. Meanwhile, an elf is watching everything and asks Kaori if that's the guy who ran off with President Mizuki's money. The warrior agrees and says he made the two of them lose 40 million. The elf says the brat looks stupid. Kaori says she thought so too, but the boy is max level in parrying, and they just need to get the hero armor back. Usumi Shingen, who is max level and one of the best players in the game, says he expects to be paid 5 times more. Kaori replies that she'll pay well, so he'd better do it fast. With his bow ready, the elf says it'll only take 1 shot, but the girl senses something strange, and pushes Hayato to keep him from being hit. That makes the arrow just graze past, leaving Usumi completely stunned. Kaori thought he had landed the shot, and cheered. However, the archer is frustrated because the bastard dodged the arrow, and a counterattack comes right after, but it doesn't hit either of them. Our protagonist is ready for the fight now. Kaori sees with her own eyes that he dodged the arrow and thinks it's impossible. After all, Usumi is the 82nd best player. Irritated, the archer prepares another attack, and this one was so powerful, it created a shockwave. Hayato is ready to parry, but the mysterious girl kicks him with all her strength. Usumi thinks the young man knows about his abilities. Then the girl says he deliberately fired at angles that would make it easy to knock him down and force a parry. She knows the guy has the ability to pierce armor that beats his own. That's why he shoots like that. But idiot Hayato has never even heard of that ability. Usumi got it a while ago as a reward from a secret quest, and he's the only one in the whole world who has it. There's no way the brat could know that. It was probably just a coincidence. The archer wants to show off because Kaori is watching, so he uses the satellite arrow skill, but he won't be able to attack for 3 seconds. The arrow turned into several projectiles, and Hayato is running to defend himself. Usumi thinks the brat won't be able to dodge this. Then the girl says that yes he can. He just has to follow her and he'll be able to win. The protagonist isn't very confident about that. If he keeps running he'll definitely die, so he'd better follow her instructions, because he doesn't want them to steal his hero armor back. So the boy decides to follow her instructions, because he has nothing to lose. Usumi is intrigued that the kid stopped running. Now, Hayato is following the mysterious girl's orders, and he creates a huge explosion that blows all the projectiles away at once. In the end, only his armor is left. Smiling, Usumi says the mission is complete, and the two of them teleport down there. However, when Kaori goes to grab the armor, she notices something. One by one, the items disappear, and a blade appears near Usumi's pointed ear. It's Hayato, using the Badlander armor for stealth. 1 minute earlier, under all the smoke, Ikasaki says the attacks are over. Now they just have to make the two of them come down there. The girl checks his inventory and sees the Badlander set in there, and tells him to equip it right now, because he'll never beat a long-range player. He needs to get close. That was the plan. But unfortunately, Usumi managed to block the attack with his bow. Next, the stronger player jumps back and prepares a counterattack. But the protagonist was quick, grabbed the hero's sword and is ready to destroy him. The girl shouts for the young man to be careful, because Kaori is preparing her attack. He turns around at that very moment and unleashes a flurry strike. That sends the blonde flying far away. Unfortunately, that gives Usumi an opening to fire an arrow. Ikasaki warns that Hayato needs to watch his right side, and he turns in a swift motion. As soon as the arrow gets close enough, the protagonist uses his perfect parry, going straight into a counterattack, without giving the archer time to think. Hayato uses Divine Guillotine and defeats the 82nd best player in the world. However, Usumi uses the goddess's mercy, which teleports him to the nearest city when his health drops below 10%. Kaori, who is badly injured, does the same, and the two of them get out of there, with their egos bruised. Our Hayato is very tired, but shocked that he won. Smiling, the girl says she told him she'd make him win the battle. This makes the young man realize that she really isn't an NPC, but a goddess of victory. As they leave that area, Ikasaki explains that from here on out, if he keeps giving her his strength, he'll be victorious in every battle. The boy knows she isn't lying. It's been quite a while since Hayato started playing Final Kingdom, so he knows there's a huge skill gap between him and Usumi. The guy was a pro player, no doubt about it. If they had faced each other under normal conditions, even with the hero's armor, the young man would have lost easily. But thanks to the girl, he won, and he won in style. After all, who is this girl? She asks the protagonist to help her get her memories back, and she'll help him become the best in the world. The girl won't let anyone beat him ever again. However, Hayato turns down the offer. While wearing his hero's armor, he explains that the proposal is great, but he's having trouble living his own life, so he doesn't have time to help. Ikasaki exclaims that if the young man becomes #1 in the world, he'll become a champion, and won't have to worry about money. Hayato says she'll make him win if he follows all her instructions, so that means his only options are to follow her or lose. And he doesn't even want to be famous. After all, things are fine the way they are, so she'd better find someone more suitable to help her. Since she knows the game well, her memories should come back quickly. The girl becomes desperate when the boy logs out, because she can't talk to anyone else. In the real world, Kaori is getting scolded because the plan failed, and her boss lost more than 40 million. However, she insists that the pro player he sent wasn't up to the job. That's when someone stops Sonoda from slapping the blonde. The mysterious man states that making all this noise won't bring the money back. Kaori should be grateful to the president for not slapping her. He then asks whether Hayato really beat Usumi Shingen, and she agrees, saying that even the archer himself can confirm it. An ordinary guy beating a pro player who apparently wasn't all that talented. The president says Hayato could be an interesting card to play at the right moment. At home, the protagonist has to make a payment of more than 15 million to pay off his debt. Now the young man has finally paid back all the loan money, and maybe he should have waited, because he still had a little time left. Humans really do like spending a lot of money. If he isn't careful, he'll end up with nothing. And there's still the issue of Sonoda, who won't get off his back that easily. And it's a small world. The boy has 290,000 in his account. Maybe he's a bit greedy, because he could be staying in a cheaper, smaller room. And the protagonist had been thinking about traveling abroad for a bit, but for now, it's just a dream. But if you really think about it, Final Kingdom is a kind of trip too. Meanwhile, the girl has been sad for a week, waiting for Hayato to come back. That's when he appears behind her. She hugs him with absurd strength. Hayato asks why she's still there, and the girl asks him to think again about the offer, because they can find a way to make the young man very rich. The hero still doesn't understand and isn't interested, so he asks her to find someone else. But Ikasaki says he has nothing to lose just by listening, because with her plan, the boy won't become famous. So Hayato agrees to listen and is shocked by what he hears. She grabs his hand and says she'll show him. The Cursed Sanctuary is a dungeon known for never having been cleared by anyone since the game launched. The girl explains that if they clear it, she'll be able to get the rare book she wants so badly. But the protagonist thinks it was stupid to follow her just for a book, because that place is terrifying. However, the girl insists that he'll get rich there. Hayato explains that even if the 5 best guilds in the world joined forces, they still wouldn't be able to clear that place. And the people who went in basically made a pact not to talk about what monsters are in there or how many floors it has. They only said it's a place designed so that no player can win. Technically, to clear it, they have to wait for a natural collapse. He explains that Final Kingdom is a VR game created by FK Software, based on a book, so the quests follow the path of the original work. In fact, knowledge from it greatly affects skill and strategy within the game. At that, the girl wants to know what that has to do with this dungeon. It's because, a long time ago, a demon king descended upon the peaceful continent and destroyed everything there. To put an end to the beast, all the kings of the continent gathered an army to counterattack. But then they were defeated by the demon king's extraordinary power. So Prince Edward, of the kingdom of Aslam, offered his own body to seal away the monster. But doing that in a mortal body means he can only be reborn when the vessel dies. To prevent that, Edward entered the temple to protect his body from the outside world. However, 500 years ago, the man's body naturally began to weaken. Containing the demon king's power became difficult. So one day, a wave of dark power flowed from the old man's body, and thus the 12 demon lords were born, weakening the balance of the entire world. In the game, the players have the duty to be heroes and save the world. Based on the story's progression, they'll reach Chapter 2 at the moment. The Demon King comes back to life and old Edward dies. However, some pro players tried to break the magic seal on their own, killing the 12 lords and forcing Chapter 2, but they always failed in the cursed sanctuary. Smiling, Ikasaki says that means the 2 of them are going to be the heroes who start Chapter 2. That makes Hayato extremely nervous, repeating that there's no way to beat this place, because it was made to be impossible until Edward dies. And the girl calmly says she knows how to clear the sanctuary. The girl's confidence leaves the protagonist a little confused. She insists that ever since that fight, he should realize they really can do it. The boy then remembers the incredible battle from earlier, and she says he's the one who decides whether he'll believe her or not. Either way, it's not a PvP area, so even if he dies there, he won't lose his items. This time, the boy isn't alone. What's the harm in trying? She's assuring him of their victory this time too, and Hayato realizes it's the same expression as last time. It's not a bluff. If this works, he's going to be swimming in money. And so the 2 of them go. The protagonist enters the sanctuary in stealth, wearing the Badlander set. Meanwhile, the girl explains that the mage's abilities can undo his stealth if he isn't careful, and every time she gives the signal, the hero has to attack. But there's something strange about this, because the missions in Final Kingdom are basically about becoming a hero while defeating the Demon King's army, but now it feels like he's a villain working to resurrect the big guy. Ikasaki asks if the young man wants to give up on the rare book, but he says it's just a game and he only wants the money. That's when an enemy attacks him from behind, but the girl is quick and kicks Hayato away. The guy is strong, and the young man has no idea how he noticed him. Then the warrior vanishes, and the protagonist realizes the creature is hiding in the shadows. When the boy least expects it, a mage activates his power, and his stealth disappears all at once. In front of countless enemies, he's screwed. They launch their attack, and Hayato runs, switching armor on the spot. While he's running, some bizarre shadow takes shape. It's a huge enemy, but the boy is already prepared with his hero's sword, and he manages to parry it, while also landing a solid counterattack. Hayato starts using a power. However, the girl shouts that physical attacks won't work. Unfortunately, it's already too late, and the monster gets sliced to pieces. Confused, the protagonist thinks it was way too easy. The girl exclaims that if the statues are broken, they multiply. Hayato complains that this should have been the first thing he was told, and he runs for his life. But he's completely surrounded by stone warriors. Quickly, our hero avoids a deadly attack from the big brute. At the same moment, a mage statue casts a fireball spell at him, which fortunately is perfectly parried, and sent back at the enemy, splitting it in 2. But the girl shouts that they multiply if the attack destroys only part of them, but the boy had no other option. A shadowy being manifests on a pillar, saying things in an unknown language, and the statues begin forming from the broken pieces to protect the king. Apparently that big guy is what really matters. The girl saves Hayato from another attack, telling him not to look at the guy on the pillar. An archer fires an arrow at him, and the girl calls out the direction. The protagonist manages to stop it, and she warns him about another attack, which the boy avoids. She also says they're using magic now and firing every second. The mage statues unleash endless barrages of spells which Hayato dodges, counterattacking with his hero's sword. He asks about the others, and the girl replies that there's nothing to be done. Since there are too many statues, they'll need a plan B, and that so-called plan is to run away, because they can't use a return scroll. After all, it's an epic dungeon. The entity on the pillar watches the boy closely, and follows him, but the girl notices and tells Hayato to be careful. The being nearly sends our hero to his doom. Then the enemy is already preparing another powerful blow. The king of Parian manages to parry another one, and send the big creature flying far away in a thunderous shockwave. The second it touches the ground, it already charges in violently, which, incredibly, is successfully parried in this epic fight. Hayato launches a sword attack straight at the stone entity, but obviously that doesn't defeat it, so the protagonist keeps going with several rapid strikes, without pause. Both attack at the same moment, making their weapons clash and causing a boom. Hayato realizes the guy isn't going to let them escape that easily, so he asks his friend if there's another way out. She has a strange plan and kicks him toward the enemy, which, strategically, makes his sword sink all the way into the stone entity's chest. The weapon sank into its stone body, but didn't destroy it, and it gave the giant monster an opening to kick Hayato. The enemy starts opening the wound in its chest, then it simply explodes into shadows. The protagonist is very confused by the situation, but Ikasaki explains that the core is its weakness. Hayato could have done that earlier, but he multiplied the statues before reaching the boss. It's a very difficult strategy to pull off for those in the warrior class. Now the only way out is to destroy the stone statues until she says they can leave. Confused, Hayato asks if they won't multiply, and Ikasaki says she has a plan. Then the hero keeps going with his perfect parries, when the ground starts giving way beneath his feet, because warrior attacks are heavy, even if he's only parrying. Next, the protagonist attacks another statue, but the girl explains that they're wearing armor, so the young man has to aim for their necks, and that's what Hayato does, striking the statue's weak point with his sword. More and more stone guards are defeated, one after another. Unfortunately, the mage statues start casting all kinds of spells. Ikasaki tells the boy to parry everything, and that's exactly what he does with every attack. Then the spells fall onto the statues themselves, destroying each and every one of them. That seems to irritate the big creature, which says something in an unknown language. Apparently it's the shadow duplication skill. And of course they all come back to life to protect the old man. The army has more than doubled in size now. Nervous, our boy relies on Ikasaki, and she thinks this will work. They all launch their attack at the same time, and the girl tells Hayato to switch from offense to defense. He parries everything, and the archers are relentless. Ikasaki kicks the young man to keep him from being hit. That red power is completely lethal, but Hayato is busy defending himself from a direct attack. It almost looks like the protagonist got hit, but he's already moved on to the next strike. Building up strong momentum, he splits the statue into several pieces. Thanks to Ikasaki warning him about something coming from the left, the hero manages to parry the arrows. However, a strong attack comes from behind the boy, and hits him in the waist, piercing straight through him. The arrows don't stop either. That forces Hayato to use an intermediate stamina potion. A powerful poison explosion is starting up in the purple symbols, and Ikasaki tells the young man to parry it toward the entity. The boy does just that, which the creature wasn't expecting. But even so, it unfortunately manages to escape in time. More and more poison shots are coming, and all of them are repelled back at the enemy. One of them hits the monster right in the shoulder, and its whole body starts dissolving. At that moment, Ikasaki notices that the enemy is slowly increasing the number of shadows. To win, they'll have to finish it off first, so the only option is to dissolve the guy. Hayato repels several attacks, shouting that the monster has nowhere to run, and just like that, the boss was completely dissolved, which makes the other statues break apart. Ikasaki says she told him that guy was the main one and controlled them all. The two of them were lucky they used poison explosion 5 times in a row. If it weren't for that, they wouldn't have won. It's a spell sorcerers usually ignore because it doesn't deal much damage. It can be learned at level 50. However, one amazing aspect of this skill is that it's the only spell capable of dissolving black stone statues. The only reason she told him to keep attacking was to increase the number, and along with that, the chance of getting poison explosion. Ikasaki takes Hayato's hand and says with a smile that they should head to the next floor. Even though Prince Edward of the Kingdom of Aslam offered up his body and sealed the Demon King 500 years ago, if his life ends, the giant monster will return, and the weaker he gets, the harder it is to contain the demon's power. And there the two of them are, in the Cursed Sanctuary, on the 39th floor, facing a huge 3-headed eagle monster. It's the final boss. If Hayato fails, everything will have been for nothing. The boy agrees, dodging an attack. Each mouth fires a different type of magic, and the fire and ice ones shoot toward the protagonist. The parrying master manages to deflect every attack. At that, Ikasaki shouts that the cross on the middle neck is the weak point. Then Hayato makes a full force charge, hitting the monster dead on. The griffin screams in pain as it is destroyed. Not satisfied, the hero drives his sword in deeper, and when the beast falls, Hayato levels up. Now he's at 75, which is the maximum. The final floor is clear. Only the famous Edward remains. Ikasaki explains that if he loses his fighting spirit, he'll lose, because the guy is stronger than every enemy they've faced so far. And then the gate opens. while Hayato replies that he knows Edward is one of the strongest in the game. There is the man, sitting on his throne. Edward comments that the brat stepped in there knowing what kind of place it was. A dark aura quickly emanates from the man, and his physical defense drops by 100%, thanks to the spell Pride of the Supreme Ruler. Edward complains that the kid committed the sin of disturbing his rest, and the boy's magic defense drops by 100%. Meanwhile, Hayato realizes that this means even a light attack could cause a fatal wound. The man shouts for him to pay the price with death, and his stamina drops by 100%. At that, the enemy stands up and prepares to finish off the protagonist. Ikasaki is quick to kick Hayato away. If it weren't for that, he would have been killed right there by the first attack. That makes Edward suspicious, because the boy dodged even without stamina. The girl grabs the young man by the hair, and he complains that he can dodge. However, in that case, without her he would have lost his head. Edward's dark weapon attacks are very fast and powerful. One of the blows sends Hayato flying, and the enemy lunges forward too fast for Ikasaki to help. Yeah, I guess this time the hero is done for. He would be, if not for the master of parrying. The two swords clash with a loud bang, and Hayato takes the impact, not Edward, which means the parry isn't working like it should. The boy slams hard into the wall, with zero physical and magical defense. On top of that, his stamina has been drained, and his parry isn't working. Winning against an opponent like this seems impossible. The boy still manages to defend himself a little, with his sword and agility. However, Edward is bloodthirsty, and already has another one ready. A barrage of intense blows without pause. Our hero is having trouble defending against it all. And, to make matters worse, his sword cracks. Hayato realizes the guy targeted it on purpose. One more hit, and the sword will break in half. Fortunately, Ikasaki quickly pulls the boy away. That leaves Edward very confused. He turns around and immediately launches another attack at his sword. The boy is sprawled on the ground, with his expensive hero sword broken, and it disappears. Since its durability has reached zero, Ikasaki tells the boy to stop crying and stay in the fight, because Edward isn't going to rest. The girl is happy when she notices the enemy raised his arm, and pulls Hayato away from the shockwave. It opens a hole in the wall, and Ikasaki tells the young man to run there. There is an incredible suit of armor there, and brand new. The people who fought the Demon King 500 years ago left the equipment there. Edward notices that and seems a little uneasy. But that's because he remembered his old friends. The idiot can't run because he has no stamina. So Ikasaki grabs his hand and throws him all at once. That makes the big guy furious, complaining that he's going to contaminate his comrade's equipment. His sword attack creates a black wave with lightning that follows the protagonist. The sword is so close, but there's no way to know if Hayato will make it in time. A huge explosion happens in the room. Ikasaki gets very worried about her friend. The young man is standing before a sword of light. Edward says that Alendite chose the brat as its successor. He can't let go of the sword anymore. It's legendary, and deals 500 damage. It's the sword his enemy used to seal the Demon King. Hayato doesn't know why the weapon chose him, but as soon as he grabs it, all his skill levels go up by 3, and the debuffs disappear. Our hero is extremely powerful now, and will use the sword to its fullest. Ikasaki shouts that this is his chance to attack Edward. He charges in, saying this sword is even better than the hero's sword, and uses the Alendite skill, which can only be used 5 times a day. It looks like this is the end of Edward, or not, because he counterattacks. A gigantic blue beam shoots out from inside the cursed sanctuary. Then, beside it, a dark black beam appears. The two energies merge, as the two fight, and everything explodes in purple, even outside the place. Our hero is sprawled out, without armor, because its durability reached 0. However, Edward still seems perfectly fine. Since the boy is bleeding, he's taking continuous damage, and the guy doesn't seem hurt. He extends his hand toward the hero, and uses his sacrifice skill, restoring Hayato's life, and losing his own in the process. At that moment, Edward says that he has always been waiting for his successor, and the boy is still inexperienced. But there is a possibility. The man's energy is passed on to the boy, and so are his war memories. His friends died, and Edward swore he would never forgive the Demon King. The man cut through every attack from the monster, but he couldn't defeat him with his power alone. Edward knew that, but with Alendite driven into the king's chest, he could at least seal him. The monster screams that if he seals him, since he is mortal, when he dies, he will return to the world. After that, the man built the heavily protected sanctuary, because if he fails, the Demon King will return. And with that, years and years passed. His body could no longer endure containing that power. He needs someone else to do it. So the Demon King's power is transferred to Hayato, with the mission of keeping him sealed, along with the ability to use skills without consuming life, and everything goes up by 20 points. The boy now has an evil aura. Shocked to realize that Edward had spent all this time simply waiting for someone to take his place and carry his unbearably heavy burden. Back in the dungeon, a thunderous crash sweeps across the floor, revealing Edward, collapsing and coughing up blood. Hayato runs toward him, but the warrior's soul only smiles, leaving the future of the world in the boy's hands. Before Hayato can even freak out, the place erupts, firing a colossal pillar of light that tears through the sky and triggers a global system announcement. Players across the map stop what they're doing, left stunned as they see that Edward's death has ushered in a new era. The scale is so massive that the flash is visible even from space, while a dark energy begins swallowing continents, showing that the Demon King's seal has finally given way. The system warns that monsters are appearing, revealing a sea of red-eyed shadowy creatures, which quickly materialize into a demonic army. Not understanding anything, the players are thrown into shock when they see that the level cap has just risen to 99. A blinding flash dominates the horizon, drawing the attention of the entire kingdom of Aslan, where the Elf King watches the phenomenon from the balcony. Ulysses immediately deduces that the legendary hero has passed on, but finds it strange. It was still far too early for him to die. At the center of it all, Hayato remains staring at the sky, torn open by energy. Hayato keeps staring at the sky, still processing the hero's death, until Ikasaki appears out of nowhere, congratulating the boy, flashing a huge grin as he reveals that Hayato has inherited the title of Demon King Sealer. He stares at his own hands, unable to believe the new responsibility, but panics when he realizes the seal will keep draining his mana non-stop. Desperate, he protests that this wasn't the plan, and immediately demands the rare class book, the real reward. Ikasaki lets out a nervous chuckle and tries to play it off, admitting that the item was supposed to be in Edward's quarters, but everything got out of control. Breaking into a cold sweat, he suggests that the blessed book probably turned to dust along with the sanctuary. Hayato's desperate scream echoes through the game's mountains, cutting to the real world, where he takes off his VR headset with his soul drained. Watching the sun rise, he laments having been logged in for 2 straight days, but the exhaustion turns to panic when he starts foaming at the mouth, remembering the legendary sword he got from Edward, which is a bound, non-tradable item. To make matters worse, the sealer title is also permanently stuck to his account, leaving him with no profit and his million-worth armor in pieces. In total collapse, he throws himself to the floor crying over the absurd loss, and blames Ikasaki for everything, imagining the ghost making a mocking peace sign. Trembling from head to toe, he can barely stay on his feet, collapsing to the floor and admitting that he's so hungry, he doesn't even have the strength to get mad. Seeing the clock read 6:35, he laments that he can't even order delivery, deciding to drag himself outside and wander the empty streets, looking for a 24-hour restaurant. But the search is interrupted when a black van passes by him and screeches to a stop, parking right beside him. From inside the vehicle, 3 shadowy figures stare at him in silence, making Hayato widen his eyes and break into a cold sweat as he realizes danger has come knocking. The leader orders them to check the victim's face, yanking the bag off Hayato's head, and he blinks in confusion as he finds himself thrown onto the ground, surrounded by a threatening trio. His eyes go wide when he recognizes the kidnappers, remembering when he soloed and robbed this same team in the game's desert. The bespectacled man in a suit yells, demanding the items back and threatening to kill him if he refuses. Realizing he was kidnapped over loot, he lets out a nervous smile, sweating cold as he realizes he's completely screwed. Far from there, the scene cuts to a residential building under the moonlight, revealing Shoma sprawled on his bed, grumbling about having to throw fake matches against newbies. Shoma lies there, bored, letting out a sigh as he remembers the absurd proposal he received. He knows the underground arenas seem to be ignored by the pros, but in reality those tournaments are full of retired veterans. Scratching his head, he remembers that even those monsters sweat blood for a single victory, and grits his teeth just thinking about being told to compete in that hell. Furious, he flips off the ceiling, grumbling that that was exactly the response he should have given on the spot. The problem is that in practice, he ended up on his knees surrounded by a gang, crying while the suited men pressured him to accept the scheme. Trying to forget the humiliation, Shoma grumbles that it'd be best to sleep, while the nighttime city takes over the screen. Far from there, in a brightly lit office, a subordinate hands a folder to his boss, who opens it right away to check it. The suited man smiles when he sees the list of recruited fighters, hearing from the employee that they attracted the best representatives from the 3 most popular underground arenas in Asia. Satisfied, he praises the hard work, aware that convincing those people to switch sides is no easy task. He then slides a thick envelope across the desk as a reward, making the manager bow immediately to thank him for the bonus. Instead of leaving, the manager hesitates and stays put, making the suited man notice his unease and ask if he has something to say. The subordinate works up the courage to ask a question, wanting to know why they dragged that Sun Wu guy into the scheme, since the elite team they recruited should be more than enough. The boss agrees, imagining veterans facing off in colossal battles, which would pack the stands with fans. Comparing the situation to an epic crossover with Batman and Iron Man beating the hell out of each other, he assures him that the event's hype would make betting money pour into their accounts. But then he adjusts his glasses with a smug smile and asks whether the employee really thinks that alone is enough. The subordinate is stunned, and asks how no one had ever thought of a scheme like this before. The boss keeps up the act, explaining that the big underground arenas preserve their monopoly by greasing the palms of powerful people. He flashes a greedy smile, illustrating a third company pouring money in to poach the competition's star players, leaving their original owners foaming with rage. Breaking into a cold sweat, the manager asks how they dealt with those cheeky newcomers, and hears that the solution was simple. The old companies bribed the fighters back. With a grim look, the man in the suit says that pulling a scam and running is no longer an option, revealing the threatening silhouette of a big shot smoking a cigar. This time, the massive investment is coming straight from the feared President Wang. The boss tosses a chip onto the table, saying they need a real joker to take on the veterans, making the manager lose it when he sees Hayato's photo, and yells that he's nothing but a rookie. Unable to accept it, he lowers his head with a heavy sigh, but the suited man only lets out an eerie chuckle. Resting his hands under his chin, he asks if his subordinate really thinks this choice was random, leaving the employee completely lost. Sonoda then flashes a sharp smile, his eyes glowing a bizarre purple, revealing that he has already seen the boy's true potential through his familiar hawk. Cut to the magical bird soaring over the crater of the secret dungeon, reflecting in its eyes the exact moment Hayato absorbs the Demon King's aura in front of the hero. The hawk wheels around in the sky, fleeing from the dark energy, and dives down to the master waiting for it atop the mountain. As soon as the bird lands on his arm, Sonoda's avatar absorbs the bird's memories in a purplish flash, clearly seeing Hayato's face in the middle of that demonic aura. The elf's eyes go wide in shock, and at that very moment, he sees the sanctuary's gigantic pillar of light tear across the horizon. The game image blends into Sonoda's face in the real world, and he breaks into a greedy smile as he realizes he has stumbled onto the server's biggest secret. Not understanding a thing, the manager sprawled on the floor, can only try to imagine what the hell the boss saw to have the nerve to bet the company's future on some random kid. Walking through the hallways, the manager runs into a figure leaning against the wall, revealing pro player Soja Hyuk, arms crossed and looking anything but friendly. Confused, the suited man asks what he's doing there at this hour. But Jae-hyuk ignores the question and gets straight to the point, demanding to know who that bastard is. The employee looks completely baffled, not understanding who he means, until Jae-hyuk grits his teeth, making it clear he means the guy who screwed him over a few days ago. The manager connects the dots immediately, remembering the veteran's humiliating defeat to our MC, and asks why he's looking for the kid there of all places. Jae-hyuk flashes a sharp smile, saying the company also lost millions because of the rookie and has definitely already tracked him down. In a panic, the man tries to talk the player out of that idea, reminding him that he got his ass kicked by the kid even while fighting as a duo. The redhead grits his teeth, boiling with hatred at the reminder of that humiliation. Losing his patience, he lunges forward and grabs the manager by the collar, who shrinks back but still taunts him, asking if he's going to make excuses and say he only let his guard down. Trembling with pure fury at the provocation, he shoves the suited man away and lets go. Without saying a word, he turns his back and heads up the stairs, huffing in anger, while the employee straightens his jacket and takes the opening to steer the conversation. Then he dangles the bait. A new underground arena is about to open, and the kid will definitely show up there. Jae-hyuk stops in his tracks and turns his head, interested in the information. With a sly smile, the manager says that if he really wants a rematch, all he has to do is sign up for the tournament. The manager lets out an ironic chuckle, reminding him that as a professional player, he would be banned forever if he were caught in an underground tournament. The scene cuts to the facade of a gigantic esports stadium, where the crowd is going wild watching an official match. On the big screen, world rank #32, Kim Seon-won charges at his opponent, hurriedly drawing his bowstring to defend himself. The big man gives a confident little grin, swatting the arrow out of the air with a brutal punch. Titanium. The archer clicks his tongue when he sees the attack fail, leaving his guard open for the fighter, who is already preparing his next blow with his fist glowing with energy. Under pressure, the archer activates Hawkeye, narrowly dodging a colossal punch. With his enhanced vision, he zigzags across the arena, slipping through the rain of blows, leaving the audience speechless. The attacks barely miss, but the big man only smiles, realizing the other guy is using the skill to read his movements. Determined to strike back, he stomps hard on the arena, catching the elf off guard. A sharp thud tears through the air, and the shooter is sent flying backward after taking a devastating hit. Bleeding, the elf realizes his opponent activated Quickstep, sacrificing half his power for absolute speed. The big man launches into a combo, certain that even with reduced attack power, it is still enough to crush a fragile target, and sends the poor guy flying with an explosive uppercut. The shooter plummets in free fall, crashing into the arena floor with a heavy bang. Certain of victory, the champion smiles and declares the fight over. But as the dust settles, a glowing arrow tears through the smoke in a lightning-fast counterattack, making the brute's eyes go wide in shock. Magnum arrow pierces straight through the big man's chest, disintegrating the avatar into pixels as the system announces the death. Exhausted, the elf draws a breath after turning the fight around. In the stands, no one can understand how he endured a direct hit wearing nothing but leather. A murmur ripples through the stadium, until the defeated player himself opens the capsule and says the explanation is simple. Back in the real world, Kim takes off his immersion goggles with a calm smile and deduces that the archer was wearing plate armor under his clothes. The stands are stunned, an archer in plate armor. As he steps out of the capsule, the pro player looks the kid in the eye and asks if he got it right. The redhead sighs and admits it. He nailed it. The crowd can't believe what they're hearing, saying the armor was just leather disguised by a transformation effect to change its appearance, since plate armor requires at least 90 strength, otherwise the penalty cuts stamina and speed in half. The veteran bursts out laughing and says that answer is simple too. Grabbing the boy in a friendly way, he reveals that the archer didn't put a single point into dexterity and asks once again if his deduction is correct. Looking annoyed, the boy grumbles that they just leaked his build live on air, but the pro player doesn't care, reminding him that they're on the same team now. The stadium goes wild, trying to understand how someone with zero accuracy can still hit targets, until Kim gives a slight smirk and assures them the kid shoots on pure instinct. The crowd is left in shock at the word instinct, while the redhead just scowls, bothered by all the attention. Cutting the conversation short, he asks the big guy to stop spilling his secrets and hand over the promised reward already. The veteran forces a smile and mentions the item the redhead picked up a while back. The reward was a sealed magic scroll. Staring at the boy, the veteran realizes the whole bet was just to get that item, and the sharpshooter narrows his eyes, asking if he's going to back out. Irritated, Kim bonks the kid on the head, then puffs out his chest and says a real man keeps his word and will hand it over. The stands erupt, shouting that a rare class scroll is worth a luxury apartment. Ignoring everyone's shock, the veteran points at the capsules and tells the boy to log in and claim his prize. The redhead grits his teeth, his gaze blazing, remembering when he got crushed in the game and swearing that now he'll have his revenge. Cut to the next morning. The young man is sprawled across the bed, snoring, fast asleep, drooling on the pillow, while Hayato's thoughts echo through the transition, promising to repay every bit of humiliation he suffered. The day dawns peacefully, the sun reflecting off the city's buildings, and lighting up a modern apartment with an immersion capsule in the living room. On TV, the anchor announces the major Final Kingdom update, and comments on how society lives split between the real and virtual worlds. The reporter explains that the other half of the population lives focused on Final Kingdom, while our boy is already settling into the capsule, ready to dive into the new season. The immersion visor lowers over his eyes, and confirms the login, whispering the avatar's name. The system scans his iris, launching Hayato's consciousness straight into the game. He appears in a fantastical city, absurdly crowded, walking through the packed market with Ikasaki's spirit following behind him. The girl scolds him for agreeing to enter an underground arena, but he just inspects a new suit of armor, noting that in the underworld, he won't need to show his face. Walking through the market, he explains that he can fight anonymously because the tournament is illegal, and that only people invited by trusted intermediaries can enter. The little ghost crosses her arms and pouts, annoyed that he's asking for help in the arena, and shouts that the deal was to recover her memories. Hayato makes an awkward face and shoots back, asking where she got that idea, since she was the one who lured him in with the promise of a rare scroll. The memory of the secret dungeon appears, showing the absurd battle where he was crushed and had his sword shattered. Boiling over at the thought that he lost all his gear because of her, he snaps at his partner, but soon sighs in defeat, promising that this time he'll really help her if she gives him a hand in the tournament. The little ghost strikes a bodybuilder pose and promises to crush the opponents like child's play, which makes Hayato smile confidently, sure her abilities can handle even a veteran. But the conversation is cut short when his eyes land on a strange item, and he picks up a shining breastplate he's never seen before. The system interface displays the stats of Peterson's armor, leaving him speechless at the absurd defense and HP bonuses on a mere B+ rank item. Shouting, he demands to know where the feline merchant got such an overpowered piece of equipment, and the cat casually explains that it came from the continent of Kalos. Seeing his blank expression, the shopkeeper is surprised he doesn't know the biggest news in the game, and reveals that an entire continent appeared in the latest update, leaving him stunned. The feline stares at the boy, bored, not understanding all the shock, and explains that the second act began when the hero Edward kicked the bucket. Hayato lets out a nervous laugh, remembering that he himself caused the global event, but the merchant tilts his head, puzzled that the customer doesn't know about the map expansion. Breaking into a cold sweat, the protagonist remembers that the burst of light in the dungeon kept him from seeing the system notifications, while the cat insists the topic has been all over real-world news. To cover for himself, the kid scratches his head and makes up that he blacked out for 3 days from working too hard. The shopkeeper buys the excuse and reveals that average Kalos items are on par with Aslan's rank UF equipment, sighing as he recalls how that crashed prices in Aslan. Hearing the complaint, Hayato immediately turns his head, connecting the dots. The market is total chaos, vendors shouting at the top of their lungs about absurd items from the new continent, leaving him frozen as he realizes that, being so distracted, he didn't even notice the change. He runs off, drawn by the glow of a magic bracelet. Inspecting the accessory, he nearly has a heart attack, drooling when he sees that the A-rank item gives absurd bonuses to attack speed and cooldown reduction. A combination like that only shows up on SS rank equipment. Out of his mind, he bumps into others as he rushes to check the next stall, grabbing the battle boots of Ares, which besides defense also double jump height. The shock is so great that the item slips from his hand. Trembling, he tries to understand how a heavy armor piece gives so much mobility bonus, and breaking out in a cold sweat realizes he's screwed. The little ghost doesn't understand his despair, and he murmurs in terror that the game's meta got turned upside down while he was asleep. Innocently, she tilts her head and asks if that's really such a huge problem. He nearly has a heart attack when he remembers that 3 days have already passed since the update, more than enough time for competitors to analyze the new meta and put together broken builds. Seeing his panic, the game's creator pats him on the back and flashes a huge grin, assuring him she knows everything about the new meta. Hayato's eyes widen instantly, realizing that her consciousness receives system updates in real time. Without wasting a second, Hayato firmly grabs the little ghost's hand, pulling his partner along to farm and adapt to the new meta as quickly as possible. The scene cuts to an isolated volcanic island in the middle of an orange sea. Inside the crater, a creature starts emerging from it, rising so high it reaches the skies, but the big beast looks like it's got indigestion and spits out a person. Looks like the MC soloed another boss. And Hayato strikes a victorious pose as he receives the cursed armor of the sea dragon as a reward, and smiles after finally wrapping up his item farming. Far from there, a torch crackles on a darkened wall, revealing the red carpet of an imposing throne room. President Wong asks for the status of the preparations for the underground tournament. Kneeling, the druid Sungyun gives thanks for the generous investment, reporting that he recruited stars from the 3 biggest underground arena platforms. With many people counting down the days until the event, Wong strokes his beard as he notes that the event has already attracted the biggest gamblers, and smiles, his eyes gleaming with greed, foreseeing many candidates beyond the ones already hired. The lackey continues the report, saying that the bets have spread, the prize will be record-breaking, and veterans want in on the event, making the president stroke his beard and ask how many skilled fighters there are among them. Since registrations are anonymous, there's no way to know who will show up. Far from there, a sinister fortress rises beneath the evening sky, surrounded by an enemy army. From above, the boy watches in silence. The leader of the XXX Guild bellows, demanding immediate surrender to avoid a massacre, drawing a mocking smile from atop the wall. Scoffing at the threat, he spreads a purple aura across the wall, summoning a battalion of specters to even the odds. The enemy troops are stunned by the absurd number of hell soldiers he summoned, but the leader keeps them calm, reminding them of the arsenal of holy weapons they brought. But the kid just smiles with disdain and snaps his fingers. Immediately, the swarm of purple demons plunges from the walls, charging like an avalanche while the guild fights back by summoning a giant angel. The divine creature takes flight, purging the shadows with blasts of light, opening space for the elite archer to gun down his troops. In the middle of the chaos, a raven with glowing eyes watches, until it flaps its wings and vanishes into the night with the flock. The battlefield turns into a graveyard of players, with death notifications popping up as bodies turn into digital dust. The leader of XXX collapses to the ground, crying and trembling as he realizes there's no salvation. To make matters worse, a lieutenant stares at the coward with a sadistic smile, and finishes the enemy off with a thrust. Akado just smiles, contemplating the rain of particles and the damage done with his new necromancer disguise. Far from there, a hooded figure walks alone through a dark forest, unaware that they are being watched by Nox Fujio, the deadliest assassin guild in the world. Without warning, assassins leap from the shadows, charging all out to obliterate the lone target. But the hooded figure doesn't even break a sweat. He simply pulls the sword's hilt, and in a millisecond, a web of laser-like slashes slices the squad apart in midair. The hood flies back, revealing Nulf, an elven knight. He sheathes Sylphid Swift, the legendary weapon that cuts at the speed of light, and keeps walking calmly beneath the glow of the giant moon. A beat of wings scatters feathers across the sky, tearing through the wind with immense wings. A winged archer descends from the heavens ready for battle. The shooter is Seo Jae-yuk. Back at the president's base, the boss is stunned by the number of veterans in the event, laughing nervously and asking if they can still manipulate the bets with so many strong fighters around. Kneeling on the carpet, the druid Seojoun tells him to stay calm, flashing a malicious smile as he assures him that the hired mercenaries are monsters too. The scene cuts to a colossal warrior devouring a giant bone near the campfire, while the lackey explains that her history of losses is just a front made of thrown fights. In reality, this group's strength is surreal, which becomes clear when we see the woman massacre a legendary red dragon, leaving behind a pile of carcasses as a warm-up. The lackey reveals that these mercenaries are notorious criminals, operating in the underworld. Cut to the underground arena, a giant coliseum embedded in a scorching desert. Ikesaki is left speechless, seeing the absurd number of players who came to compete. Noticing Hayato looking around anxiously, the little ghost asks what's wrong, and turns to face an elf in a holographic mask standing right behind him. With a smug smile, the girl disables the disguise, revealing herself to be Kim Ye-yoon. Our boy grimaces in disgust when he recognizes her, and yells, asking why she's following him again. while the blonde shrugs as if she didn't even want to come. The blonde reactivates the holographic mask, saying the boss sent her to guide him through the arena as a VIP competitor. They enter an isolated corridor. There, Yahyun introduces the guest to a hulking guard wearing glasses, who looks at him with disdain, saying they shouldn't treat him like that just because he beat a pro who never even debuted. Hayato boils over, remembering that this same guy already got his ass kicked by him before, but swallows his pride and follows the big man in silence, until they stop in front of a glowing magic circle on the floor. The guard tells the kid to step onto the glowing portal on the floor, and the MC obeys, cursing the arrogant bastard in his head, while Ikesaki bursts out laughing. The teleportation spell activates, swallowing our boy in a blinding light, and dropping the group into a luxurious hall packed with masked figures. Hayato and the guides materialize with a snap, facing a crowd that radiates raw power. Sinister assassins and warriors fill every corner of the hall. The MC looks around and asks what place this is. The bespectacled guard replies, explaining that it's the VIP room for players handpicked by Director Mass, already qualified for the main tournament. Our boy swallows hard under the pressure of the atmosphere, while a giant stares down at him with his arms crossed. The guard reveals that the veterans were hired by Director Mass to act as the tournament's playmakers. In other words, paid mercenaries meant to manipulate the fight results, but since they're unpredictable criminals, the organization doubts they'll follow the script. Looking at Hayato, the guide says that's why he was called the Joker. With a mocking smile, the brute doubts the rookie can handle it, making Ikesaki snort in indignation. The little ghost tells the old man to mind his own business, insisting her partner is unbeatable. Ignoring the spectral scolding he can't even hear, the guard shoves the protagonist from behind, leaving the boy seething with hatred at the lackey's audacity. Hayato stumbles after the guard's shove and throws himself onto the sofa, sulking with his arms crossed. A wide smile breaks the ice, revealing the horned host as he enters the hall and thanks everyone for coming. The man gets straight to the point, explaining that the tournament will have 16 participants. 12 of those spots already belong to the elite gathered there, and the other 4 will be decided in the preliminaries before the knockout stage begins. Walking across the carpet, the organizer reminds them that the event's money comes from fixing the fights, drawing a malicious grin from one mercenary, as he says everyone must fake their losses according to management's script. The horned host extends his hand, asking with a smile that everyone deactivate their masks and introduce themselves. Hayato is startled when he hears they have to show their faces. Breaking into a cold sweat, he complains that he doesn't want to be recognized in a shady place like this, making the elf sigh in boredom. Hayato freaks out when he hears that revealing their identities is standard for the tournament, questioning how that makes any sense in an illegal event. Staying calm, Yahyun says that the more illegal the business, the greater the trust between partners, and that knowing the ex-pros makes it easier to stage believable fights for the audience. Hayato gets annoyed when the blonde laughs at him for being the only amateur there. With a digital shimmer, the masks begin to dissolve one by one, revealing the weathered faces of veterans. The protagonist's eyes widen as he recognizes them, identifying the laid-back blonde as the first champion of the European League. Right beside him, a red-haired warrior in heavy armor commands respect, followed by a man in a trench coat, a living legend of the game. Even without ever debuting as a pro, our boy is left speechless when he sees himself surrounded by former esports prodigies, but soon frowns suspiciously. Looking over the rest of the crowd, he grows curious about the strange newcomers, like the giant Amazon and the hooded short guy. While the VIP room simmers, the main arena shakes as the crowd goes wild over the preliminary matches. In the arena, a masked rogue lunges at an archer, leaping back and dodging at the last second. The two exchange blows at a frantic pace, until he notices the archer is only dodging, burning through his own stamina. Smiling confidently, he admits that facing archers with short-range weapons is a nightmare, but keeps up the pressure. He knows a fatal weakness. Despite being lethal, their 1-second reload is their downfall. Even faster than a mage's casting time, drawing an arrow from the quiver creates the perfect opening for a counterattack.
The rogue explains that single second needed to draw and fire an arrow is the class's greatest flaw, and that all you have to do is keep the pressure on up close to make them completely useless.
Watching the flurry of attacks, the marksman only dodges and waits for the enemy's stamina to run out. Realizing his opponent's strategy, the masked dagger user smiles and reveals that he's equipped with the Blessing of Hermes. This S-rank boot reduces the stamina cost of advancing to 0. The elf realizes his stamina will run out first if the fight keeps going at this pace, clicking his tongue at having to resort to this already in the tournament preliminaries. With no other choice, he prepares a dazzling skill, leaving the rogue stunned by the weapon's glow. The arrow of light tears through the air, forcing the rogue to throw himself to the ground to avoid being vaporized. The marksman fixes his gaze on him, giving no quarter. He lines up the next shot, forcing the masked fighter to perform an aerial acrobatic move to escape the beam. Without missing a beat, the elf pulls 3 arrows from his quiver at once, while the warrior lands and launches himself forward in a leap to close the distance. The rogue moves in, certain that cutting the cooldown will guarantee his victory. but the opponent simply releases the bowstring, firing the arrow. At the very last second, the guy dodges, but without giving him a moment to breathe, the archer already fires another arrow. The rogue freezes when he sees the new bolt. He can barely react to the next bolt, and realizes the enemy's cooldown has dropped to half a second. Blood sprays from his mouth, as another arrow pierces his abdomen, confirming the insane 0.2-second firing rate. Cold as ice, Shinjin draws a projectile wrapped in lightning, and seals the victory by driving the shot right into the center of his forehead. The crowd goes wild. In the middle of the stands, a sly smile appears, revealing Ulysses, the 13th king of Aslan, watching everything up close, and notices the pro player drawing 3 arrows at once, eliminating useless movements and reducing the cooldown to the extreme. Beside him, the servant struggles to be heard and asks why His Majesty came to an underground tournament. Laughing, the king says he wanted to see the secret fights in his own territory, with his own eyes. The lackey presses on. Why not just organize an official tournament already, and agrees that it would be a great idea, but smiles mischievously, as he remembers that certain players only show up in the underworld. The lackey is completely lost, not understanding a thing. Far from there, in the waiting room, Blade keeps his arms crossed, sweeping the hall with a sharp gaze. Near him, the boy shrinks into the sofa, breaking out in a cold sweat, intimidated among so many pro players. The horned organizer steps to the front of the hall, announcing that the main bracket draw is starting now. He tells everyone to activate anonymous mode, and blue lights sweep over the warriors' bodies, dressing the crowd in the game's skins to hide their identities. Hayato is startled when he sees the competitors suddenly disappear, but the elf beside him rolls her eyes and tells him to stop acting like a noob because he's embarrassing himself. She points to the card on top of the table, explaining that it's a teleportation scroll straight to the main arena. As he picks up the card, Blade fixes a sharp stare in his direction, making the ghost Ikasaki freeze on the spot. The atmosphere grows heavy, until the summoning magic starts glowing throughout the entire hall. The girl swallows hard, thinking the silver-haired guy is looking at her, but there's no time to react before the flash completely swallows them both. The silver-haired guy is snapped out of his trance by a huge man in pink armor, but he immediately plays it off, saying he had only been lost in thought for a moment. As he activates anonymous mode, Blade's face is covered by light, spreading a sinister smile, confessing that he never imagined he would run into the creator of the game in that place.